Development Agency special meeting of June 22nd, 1999 to order. This time, can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and please remain standing for the invocation? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, God, for bringing us here safely tonight. Please give us the guidance and the wisdom to make the right decisions for our community. In this we pray. Amen. Amen. May we have a roll call, please?
Present.
Yep.
Present.
Present.
Present. Item number 5, these are communications from our staff. Are there any staff communications at this time? No? What's that? No. Okay. Item number 6, these are items from the public. These are non-agenda items. While the City Council welcomes and encourages participation in the meetings, it would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes so that everyone may be heard. Matters under the jurisdiction of the Council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public at this time. However, California law prohibits the Council from taking any action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the City Council. Are there any non-agenda items from the public? Seeing none, we'll move to items from the public. These are agenda items. Any member of the audience desiring to address the Council on a matter on the agenda, please raise your hand or step to the podium at the time the item is announced by the Mayor. In order that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak, any person addressing the Council will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes unless the Mayor grants a longer period of time. Are there any questions on agenda items? Okay. Item number 7, these are public hearings. Item 7A, this is to adopt resolution number 99, next number, resolution declaring the existence of a public nuisance under Ordinance 95-4. Ernie?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is a code enforcement issue. As stated in the city manager's report, the abatement notices were sent to several properties in accordance with our ordinance number 95-4. The notice informs property owners that of all the nuisance abatement procedures and their options and their right to object at public hearing. Before the beginning of the meeting, I handed out a list of property owners that had not complied with the notice to abate.
I didn't get that. Thank you. I got it now.
And so this public hearing is for the objections to be heard.
Okay.
Any questions?
Are there any questions for Ernie? Okay. At this time, since this is a public hearing, I will open up the public hearing. Ask for comments from the public. Seeing no comments, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the Council. What's your pleasure?
I recommend adoption of resolution number 99, next number, a resolution declaring the existence of a public nuisance under ordinance number 95-4.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Item number 8, this is a consent calendar. Item 8A is approval of warrants. Item 8B is approval of minutes of the June 8th, 1999 regular meeting. C is to receive and file a report regarding complaints against city contract engineer. D, approve by minute motion the renewal of an agreement for services with Self-Help Enterprises for collection of CDBG loan repayments. And E is recommend use of COPS grant funding for purchase of police department radio equipment. Are there any questions on that? Anything you'd like to have pulled? If not, can we have some direction on that, please?
I so move for approval of consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Item 9, this is regular business. Item 9A is adopt resolution of the City Council of the City of Newman approving refinancing of 1991 certificates of participation relating to wastewater treatment plant project, including approval of documents and actions relating to sale of not to exceed $3.6 million refunding certificates of participation. Cleve? Okay, Margaret.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. The item before you is a project that we started in November of '98, exploring the possibility of refinancing our wastewater treatment plant certificates of participation. This is similar to a revenue bond. It was issued in 1991, where the rate of interest ranged between 6% and 6.75%. The debt that was issued was $3,590,000. To date, the balance that remains is $3,180,000. Annual payments have amounted to approximately $291,000. The final payment will be in May of 2018. If we have recalculated what the bond payments would be, DL Financial has been the company that has helped us with the computations. Doug Erb is here representing the firm to give additional information. Interest rates have fallen to 3 to 4% for similar type bonds. Currently, the balance left to pay, interest and principal, from now until May of 2018 is $5,575,000. On the new schedule, with a new interest of 3 to 4%, it's $5,331,000. The city would realize a savings of $244,000, or approximately $13,000 a year. Attached, you have the documents necessary to proceed with the reissuance of these of the bonds. As Newman will act as the public financing authority, it's how it works when you deal with certificates of participation. They lease the treatment plant facility to the city, and the revenue that we collect from our sewer payments is what goes to finance and repay the bond. So staff asks you to consider this. If you have any questions for Mr. Erb, or he could expound upon the refinancing.
Okay. Are there any questions? Why don't you come on?
I'm just wondering if the savings is realized, will that in any way be passed along to the citizens of Newman, or is it just something we can use as revenue for the... In
In the sewer
in the
fund.
sewer. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Actually, I do have to compliment both you and Margaret for putting this together. I went through it thoroughly, and I don't have any questions as well. I think it was very well done. Straightforward.
Thank you. I guess while I'm up here, I might as well just bring up to speed exactly where we are at the moment. As you probably know, interest rates have gone up a little bit. So at the moment, we're sort of borderline on this, and we're waiting to see what happens with the Fed. And our next step on this is to get what they call bond insurance. The transaction that was done in 1991 was insured by Capital Guarantee Insurance Company, which has since been acquired by another insurance company. But our objective is to get insurance, which means that the certificates of participation will actually be AAA rated, which is what the 1991 transaction was.
I'm sorry. Could you go ahead and lift up that microphone? Sorry about that.
So our next strategy is to get these insured by insurance company to bring them up to a AAA rating,
Okay.
and which is what was done in 1991. So that's the next step after the documentation is approved. We don't expect that will be too difficult because we're going back to the same insurance company that did the 1991 transaction. So, and it's a better deal for them because obviously if you're paying less interest on it, that means their insurance has to cover less interest. So, but then the question is, you know, where's the market going to go from there? And that's the big question. Right now, it's really borderline, and it's so unless we can, you know, get a little bump in rates here, or find an investor who can put these things away at make the savings to the city, we'll just put it on hold after that, because waiting for rates to come back and into the money, as they call it. So, but right now things are a little touchy, and it's all up to Mr. Greenspan. So
Okay.
Challenge. And now you're saying that as of the moment, this would not be realized, this savings could not be realized based on...
right,
interest
if
rates.
we had done this thing, say, last week, I would have to recommend to the city not to take it. And because our original game plan in this thing is, as we did in the 1991 transaction, is to go out and make competitive bids in the market. We go out and we get those bids to come back in. If we don't meet our savings target on this thing, then we basically say, well, sorry, we didn't hit our target, we're going to reserve our right not to sell the certificates and wait for another time. The problem with that, of course, is as you wait longer, you're giving up that savings you would have achieved, but you have to set yourself a target at some point and, sort of stick to it. So that's what our game plan is at the moment.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions? One quick question, actually, that I did have was with regards to some of our other bonds in the city that we have outstanding, were we going to look at those as a next step down the road to refinancing those as well?
Yeah. We looked at some of the smaller issues, then they didn't pan out.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And the other issue you have is the issue for the redevelopment agency, which sold a little over a year ago, and that wouldn't pan out either. Number one, it's just too new. Usually you have to let these things season a while, and you get closer. They have what they call a call date, which is usually 10 years after the date it's initially sold. As you get closer to that call date, it makes more economic sense because there's less time between the amount of time from closing when you take the money and you put it in an escrow, and it sits in that escrow account until that call date. And this transaction will sit in there from whatever date we close it until 2002, which isn't really too long of a period of time. But if you did one now that was just sold a year ago, that money would be sitting there for 10 years, which is economically it's hard to meet the earnings for that in that period of time.
Okay.
One question. Assuming that the Fed raises their rates 0.25%, which looks like they probably will do, that would have a negative impact on our doing this or not?
Well, yes and no. The no part of it is that the 25 basis points is already built into the market. So that's already reflected in rates. So if they just raise the 25 basis points, everything should be fine. In fact, they might rally a little bit. The key question is, at that time, if they really indicate they're going to raise it 25 basis points more, in other words, a 50 basis points total. If it goes to a 50 basis points total, then we've got a problem. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, can we have some direction on this item, please?
I'll recommend approval of resolution number next. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Newman approving refinancing of 1991 certificates of participation relating to a wastewater treatment plant project, including approval of documents and actions relating to the sale of not to exceed $3.6 million refunding certificates of participation.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Item 9B, this adopt resolution number 99 next to number. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Newman adopting California Environmental Quality Act policies and procedures. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I have before you is kind of a complicated document. It has a lot of pages in it and a lot of words. And what they try to do is summarize a very complicated law and put it into a procedural process that hopefully will result in a little bit more streamlined resolution of CEQA decisions in the future. I've given you quite a bit of information on the history of what's happened in the last year or so with respect to CEQA. This has been a kind of a tough project for me. The requirement was that these regulations went into effect on February 22nd, and logistically we should have had implementing procedures in place 30 days later. But unfortunately nobody was ahead of this, so I couldn't go copy anybody else's work. So that meant we had to do pretty much of it all of our own, and maybe somebody can copy our work. But the reality is that what the law does is make some fundamental changes in how CEQA review occurs within municipalities, and we've taken full advantage of those review expediting measures. The exemptions to urban areas. Before it was a CEQA process, one shoe fits everyone, and it didn't make any difference if you were in the middle of a wildlife preserve or in downtown Los Angeles. You had to do the same kind of CEQA review, even though you had completely different issues and concerns. And now we have the urban exemption in the regulations, which still requires us to take a look at the environmental effects of the project, but that's a very cursory examination and allows us to move on if there's no obvious impacts to wildlife or water quality or some of the other things that we would have had to deal with in a more pristine environmental setting. This is an expedited process that I'm presenting to you. It's not a short, brief document, unfortunately, and I can give you a quick and dirty overview of it if you'd like. It's summarized in some of the attachments that I've given you. That's
You could go ahead and
pretty
give
much
us
the
a-
short and long of
sure.
my presentation. If you have any specific questions, I could go into it. I also point out that this thing has been reviewed by the best minds in the world, and then a 14-year-old child went through it and found 22 typos, and so so I will be making those corrections, but they're very minor. They're capitalized T's that shouldn't be and that sort of thing, but those typos will be corrected in your final version. And I've been thinking about hiring that 14-year-old to be my editor assistant.
Okay. Are there any questions on the smaller staff report or the more in-depth implementation policies and procedures, or any questions on the back section with regards to the impacts with the different sections?
I'm wondering whether our city attorneys had an opportunity to review and comment on this. Since it's a first, we want to be sure we are in complete legal compliance.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't catch the typo, so.
No? Oh.
You're in good company.
Are there questions, Bob, Kelly? Any questions on this? Okay. Well, the thing, and I talked to you about it earlier, was how thorough this was, and and I compliment you on that. It was very thorough, and if we don't have any questions, we could go ahead and move forward on this.
I move for approval of resolution number 99, next number. A resolution, City Council of the City of Newman adopting California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, policies and procedures.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thank you again, Bob.
Good job.
Item 9C, this is to review Sherman Ranch development process. Bob?
It was convenient to have these both put on the same time. So
I don't think this one's going to go as quick, though.
I hope not. It's frankly, it's a much more complicated and important issue. The CEQA policies and procedures are a matter of law, and we're just setting up the standards on how we proceed with it. This is probably one of the largest development projects that has been contemplated by the city and as one single development project forever, at least in recent memory. As an important project, I felt it was important that we bring everybody up to speed in terms of the kind of process that we're entering into. I know that we have some council members who are not, have never gone through a subdivision process, let alone an annexation and a pre-zoning, and what to expect, what we're looking for, and maybe some of the history that went into the development of this process. The city of Newman, not on my watch, by other people that preceded me, and we all stand on somebody's shoulders here, invested a lot of money and time in a very complicated and heavily participatory program of planning for this community. Out of that came your general plan and several specific plans, neighborhood plans that defined how the city should grow in the future. And out of that process, we have these plans adopted, and within the framework of these plans, developers are invited to submit proposals for development. Those proposals include, one, a pre-zoning or to bring it into compliance with the zoning that's identified in the general plan land use and the specific land use, an annexation of the property into the city of Newman, and the third one is the actual development proposal. In this case, it's a subdivision development. Under the Subdivision Map Act and the city's implementing subdivision ordinances, the City Planning Commission is the primary review and approval entity with respect to the subdivision map. The final map that that conforms with that tentative map that's approved by your planning commission comes to the city council for approval, and the city engineer. The whole process assumes that you've got a plan. The consistency with the plan is with the policies that you've adopted, and what we're doing is basically checking the development to make sure that it conforms with those plans. The second level of review in this process is the pre-zoning, and in that situation, the City Planning Commission holds a public hearing to make a recommendation to you with respect to the zoning. They don't have a lot of latitude in this matter because, again, the plan is set down what the land use is going to be, and what the densities are going to be for it, and if they want to change that, they have to go back and change the plans, which includes the general plan and the specific plan. A very complicated process. A lot of incentive for the developer to proceed with this in accordance with adopted city plans. A lot of disincentives to try to change it at this point in the process. They basically have to go back and reinvent the wheel. And this is part of what we went through with park dedication, as you recall. We were talking about another development where that park site was, and whether the developer really wanted to take on a plan amendment to alter the location and the size of that park. So it's a complicated process. Lots of incentive to move forward in a consistent manner with plans that you've adopted. So the zoning, pre-hearing with the Planning Commission, a referral to the City Council. City Council will take this matter up on their agenda as a rezoning or a pre-zoning matter, and you make the final decision on that. And also you will be hearing the petition to annex this unincorporated piece of property to the City of Newman. Based on your public hearings and your decision on this matter, your decision, if it is to approve the project, would be to refer the matter to LAFCO for their concurrence on the annexation. LAFCO requires that you have this property pre-zoned, which means that once it's annexed to the city, it would be zoned. The zone is conditioned on it being annexed. That means that you have police power authorities over it, so that you have enforcement jurisdiction with respect to the zoning that you've pre-approved for the property. LAFCO will make two decisions on this particular piece of property. It'll make one regarding the annexation itself, and it will also make a decision relative to Williamson Act contracts or Land Conservation Act contracts that are presently on the property. That's a little bit more complicated issue, and I could actually sit here and expound for hours on each one of these little things because I've been doing this for a lot of years. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. But I'm trying to give you a quick overview of how this process works and where we're going to be at in the next 30 to 90 days. LAFCO will give you direction with respect to how to deal with these Williamson Act contracts, whether they will permit you to cancel them. Now, it's my understanding, based on legal interpretation, that LAFCO really doesn't have the ability on two of these contracts to deny you the right to cancel the contracts because they were protested. They were put into contract under protest by the city. So under those circumstances, you'll be able to cancel those contracts. There's another contract where it's questionable. LAFCO may have a little bit more jurisdiction to tell you what to do with respect to those contracts, and you're also going to have to be making some more substantive findings with respect to potential cancellation of that contract. That last contract has some rather interesting implications with respect to the project, and it's not central or immediate with respect to the development itself, but it is the location of the park site on the project, and that park site is also part of the stormwater detention basin. If under some circumstance LAFCO decides not to give you the direction to cancel this in an expedited process, a notice of non-renewal has been filed on it, and 10 years from now that project that Williamson Act contract will automatically go out of existence. But in that interim period, the developer will be required to provide interim stormwater detention facilities and that sort of thing. That'll be part of the conditions that are put onto the subdivision. LAFCO will refer this matter back to you for your final decision with respect to annexation. Following your decision, you will file a petition with the Secretary of State with the required fees and maps and all the documentation provided by the applicant, and then the city will officially have annexed this unincorporated territory.
Bob, with regard to the Williamson Act, is it possible, let's say LAFCO has a problem with the cancellation of a Williamson Act contract, is it possible for the city to work with property owners that may not be in the path of potential development to work with them if they aren't in Williamson Act contracts to possibly get them into them to maybe offset a loss of a Williamson Act contract for another?
That might be a strategy that the city might want to undertake, but what would happen under those circumstances, you would have to, first off, it would be most likely unincorporated land that you would be looking at, and it would probably be outside of your sphere of influence.
Okay.
So I'm not sure exactly how you could, really play that that trade-off process. The Williamson Act has some public purposes that you need to look at with respect to what they're trying to accomplish. They're trying to preserve and maintain ag land. Ag land that's within your urban area, and there's a very complicated process that was undertaken to define what that urban expansion area for the city was. And ag land conservation was one of the elements that was looked at. What you want to do is preserve those, shall we say, rural urban lands in agricultural production as long as possible. But when it is needed for urban development, you want to be able to do that. And this policy and this program has been set up to accomplish just exactly that. So the property has been maintained as productive agricultural land for the last 8 years, I believe, since it was incorporated into our urban planning area and identified as a growth area. So we've accomplished our project mission, so to speak, is to keep it productive ag land for as long as possible. At this point in time, the identified need for urban land, we simply don't have any more subdivision land left to develop, and that's why this is coming before you. It's necessary to annex this land, and this is an appropriate annexation. I'm going to also point out that we have other development applications proposing to annex land of the city. They're much smaller than this one, but we will be processing those in the next few months as well. That's a long answer, I'm sure. The answer is I'm not sure if you want to do that, but that certainly is an option. And what you need to do is look at it and see what kind of issues come out of this process. There was a CEQA document that you have a copy of that was circulated for this entire project. That document will be used, and it was done in accordance with these guidelines, by the way, because they are the law, whether we had policies in place or not. It's circulated to address the environmental process that Planning Commission will be looking at next month, and you will be looking at in the following month with respect to the annexation and pre-zoning. And LAFCO will also be using that environmental document for its annexation review. So that environmental document scopes out all of the issues, addresses all of the factors that were addressed in previous environmental impact reports prepared for these planning studies, and some of the implications with respect to the immediate proposal. I'm not sure if there's anything else I want to say on this. If you have any specific questions, or if you just have some general questions about the process.
Are there any questions for Bob on this initial study? No. Okay.
We do have, as you can look around the room, a number of pictures that go into some detail on the project. Maybe I'm going to give you a quick overview of the project, not so much for you, but for the benefit of the audience that doesn't have a copy of this staff report. But this overall site is about 106 acres, and it's located in the northeast quadrant of the city. It's known as the Sherman Ranch. It includes a subdivision, annexation, and a pre-zoning. The overall project itself will result in the creation of about 370 lots, subdivision lots. There'll be a 9.27 acre parcel that can be developed for multifamily. There's medium density and low density residential in the subdivision. Those proposals are entirely consistent. In fact, they mirror the specific plan that was prepared, the neighborhood plan prepared for that part. There is a 9.21 acre community park site, and that is the area that's going to be used as a combination park site and a stormwater detention pond. Now, just so we're clear on what we're talking about, a stormwater detention pond in this situation is a pond that meters the flow of the water so that we don't get these big gushers and back supercharging our stormwater system. So what happens when we get a lot of rain at once, it goes into a stormwater pond, then it dribbles slowly into the normal drainage system so we don't supercharge the system, and that pond usually is dry within 24 to 36 hours, depending on its design. It could last several days, by the way, but normally it's a very short period of time that's underwater. And that is typically during the winter time when they're not being used as a recreation facility. So it's a win-win situation, a very common practice in urban areas these days. As opposed to some of the other stormwater ponds that you've probably seen around the community that are these big, deep pits full of plants and a fence, and they're just not very attractive. This gives us the ability to get a larger park. It also gives us a little bit more leverage with respect to what we get out of that park because it's a dual-purpose facility. The developer, of course, only has to dedicate one piece of land. The improvements that they can save in terms of the stormwater detention pond can be applied to the recreation facility, which helps them market their project better. So it's a win-win all the way around. It's become a fairly common theme in the valley, and we're fortunate that we're getting on the same page with some of the other communities that are setting a trend in this area.
Okay. Are there any questions for Bob?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, if I could. When are these houses proposed to become, the beginning building, if it gets to that point?
I can not tell you when they will be building the houses. I can tell you the time frames that we're required to live with the MAP Act, and we also have some representatives of the project here who
Why don't we
could go into that. But let me talk just briefly about the map. We have what's called a vested tentative map, and in a few months you're probably going to be reviewing a subdivision ordinance that'll go through all this and explain it. But right now you have a code that covers the subdivision. The vested tentative map means that the subdivision is going to be filed in units. It'll be filed in units over a span of 10 years. They have 10 years to essentially to complete the subdivision. Once they get the map recorded, then they have lots that they can sell to builders, and then they can be pulling building permits. We have final maps on some of the other subdivisions that have been in place for some time. But the lot inventory has been drawn down to the point where now building permits are going to start drawing up. We don't have available buildable lots. And so what this is going to do is add a new inventory. Once that map is final, that building permit can be pulled any time in the process. It's going to be driven primarily by market demand. They have some numbers with respect to what the build-out rates are in the community, and one number that's been asked by me of the public is what's this represent in terms of people. 300 and some odd lots plus the multifamily at maximum build-out, given our population, household size, is going to be someplace around population of 1,445 people. So we could expect to see that population added to the community over the span of maybe the next 10 or 15 years. And now I'd like to maybe turn this over to...
Yeah, one quick question though, Bob, before I have Mike and Curtis come up, is on the, because I know that this will probably come up at LAFCO. With regards to the initial study under 2 agricultural resources, page 9, where it has the conclusions and the data, and it talks about the cost and lost agricultural production annually. Is there any way that we could possibly balance this out before it goes to LAFCO as far as what we're talking about that this project would actually generate, though? I mean, in terms of property tax, in terms of, more people into the market area for expansion of businesses and so forth. I mean, that way, I understand this figure, but, you hardly ever see the other side of it as far as what it does for the economy. I just think it would be, because I know the county usually, the supervisors over at LAFCO usually will turn down a city annexation no matter what, and but
I've been assured
at least it's good to have some additional figures. That way the supervisors...
I understand what you're saying. It's kind of difficult, by the way, to make those kind of calculations, because you're looking at, you have to set a project life period and index it and that sort
Well,
of
even
thing.
just the property tax figures.
But from the standpoint of property tax, the city and the county have a revenue sharing agreement. We have agreed to this plan with respect to the annexation process. The only thing that the county is concerned about, and they've asked me, and we will provide them with documentation, is whether or not we need this land in order to accommodate the growth can realistically be expected to occur in the city. And we can support that. With respect to the loss of agricultural productivity, and the reason this is in there is because we did a very extensive, exhaustive environmental document on this particular issue and several others. Air quality impacts, which was found to be significant because we already have bad air quality in the San Joaquin Valley, and it doesn't make any difference if it comes from the Carquinez Straits, from the Altamont Pass. It's still bad air in the San Joaquin Valley, and so we're dinged for it. And as a result, we had to make a finding that we're going to add to that pollution.
Right.
We had to talk about air quality. We had to talk about agricultural land. We also had to talk about level of service D on our Highway 33. So these issues were already addressed in previous environmental documents. I made reference to them in this document because they were found to be significant and unavoidable. And I had to say that these significant findings, there was a statement of overriding considerations adopted by the city, which basically talked about the overall benefits of this development that's necessary to maintain the city, to accommodate population growth, and also to provide area to service the agricultural industry in the region. So these findings are already been made by the city council. They have been accepted by LAFCO, and so I don't believe that's going to be a contentious issue. But we will try to develop more information to supplement that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bob. This time I'd like to ask Mike Walker and Curtis Nelson of Hearthstone Builders to come up, if there are any questions for them.
Mike Walker, Hearthstone Builders, 1335 Main Street, Newman, California. I want to thank Bob and the staff for preparing staff report and initial study on this project for us. As some of you may know, there's some familiar faces and some new faces. This project is going on 10 years old now. We purchased the property from the Sherman family, the late Robert Sherman and Ray Sherman, which is in attendance this evening. There are no mortgages against the property. It's free of all liens, clear of any liabilities against the property. Whenever we purchase the property, you know, no one ever understands. It's kind of like a child. You never really get rid of it. You know, whenever we bought it, if we knew that California was going to go into the gravest recession that the building industry has ever experienced, we would have probably never purchased this particular piece of property. But we did, and we're still here. We'd like to compliment the city on behalf of their hard work with the general plan adoption. With the way the Three Brothers runs in the state, you've got the state, which is big brother, county, which is middle brother, and then the city becomes baby brother. And the cities have to fight for everything they get. And if we were beginning the general plan process today, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if we would have achieved what we did back in '94, and we do compliment the city on that behalf. In our industry, uncertainty is always your worst enemy. Well, the city of Newman pretty much took the uncertainty out of this project for us by adopting the general plan. This property is in the primary sphere. It laid out both low-density residential housing, this area here, medium-density housing. We have 3 units. There's 31 lots here, and then there's another, some of which is owned by Newman Enterprises, and the other portion is Manuel and Andy Gonzalez, who will take it upon to do their planning for us. We don't create an island or void. As part of the neighborhood-specific plan process, you can't leave a man behind. And this particular area is 106 acres, 102.2 zoned by Renown, and the 4.1 is owned by Manuel and Angie Gonzalez. There's also a high-density area within the plan that the city specified. I guess we can kind of begin talking with a high density. We don't know if Newman is ready for high density development or not. It appears that the vacancy rate is low. It appears that there's a need. There's not been any apartments built in some time. We understand from the Bay Area that some rent control issues are now up for consideration. There's some seniors that live over there that are going to be out of housing due to the grave demand of housing in the Bay Area. We're getting a lot of calls. We're getting a lot of interest about some type of senior, whether or not it would be a specific senior project or whether it would be just a straight apartment complex, accommodating seniors with a one-bedroom unit and then families with three-bedroom units. And we can look, I don't know, we can, while we're on the high-density property.
Well, why don't you guys go ahead and take the microphone with you? That way if you're walking around with it.
Is there glare on here? Would it be easier if we brought this up with the council to see this right up front? Or is it fine where it is?
I can see it
That's
fine.
fine. Go ahead.
This is a conceptual drawing of the apartment complex.
Hold on a second. You see that all right, Ernie? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Traditional architecture, steeper roof lines. You know, we've got some brick and stone veneer on. It would not be your typical apartment complex for this location in the Central Valley. We're very proud of it. We've given a lot of consideration to it again. We want it to be laid out to where we have plenty of parking. We've got a pool complex, a picnic complex, and also too some open space and some view space out onto the park site. Any particular questions?
Would these have garages, or would they be carports?
Carports, yeah. Most of the apartments today are carport. Looking out onto the park site, why don't we move there, Curtis? This is what we're most proud of. It's very seldom you'll have a developer show up at one of these meetings and not be trying to...
Curtis, hold on. Can you bring that park site over? Cause oh, okay, good. Okay.
Usually the first thing developers want to start a war over is their parkland dedication, as you may have already experienced. We're very proud of the parks that we've built. We've done a wonderful job up in Tracy on some community parks. We're one of the few developers up there that actually went out and spent their own money to develop the parks. Here we've, as Bob mentioned, we have a dual capacity issue. We need to be able to hold some storm water on site for public health and safety. We've incorporated a shallow detention basin, or an overflow basin as we call it. That way we can get our athletic fields in there. We can also get our multi-use court, our roller hockey, basketball. The skateboarders have been very adamant about wanting a place to ride their skateboards. We've incorporated all those into the hard surface area towards the north of the property.
Where would the skateboarding access be? Right in there?
Yeah, you can kind of see on the park site there where there is kind of the half moon above. That is a graded area where it has a slope where they, you know, it's amazing what these kids can do on these things.
Yeah.
But we've tried to incorporate some rails so they can do their hump jumps and bumps and also not take out of consideration the effect that there seems to be many more children playing this roller hockey on rollerblades. There is a big basketball contingency. Tennis has been an issue that we've heard in the community. You know, is there a possibility to have some hard surface volleyball courts, tennis courts? And we think that we've done a pretty good job being able to develop that within this park site, and again, keeping it away from our soccer fields and baseball fields. And as we understand in the community, there is a need for some new complexes and facilities for those sports.
I had a couple of questions on the
Okay.
park site. One of my questions was who would be responsible for development of the park site, but it sounds as though you would be developing the site itself.
Typically, Renown would develop the parkland site. Whether or not, again, they will be the ultimate builder of this property is not known at this time.
And then the maintenance too, would that be the developer's responsibility, or?
Oh, no, we always like to get on the
Get the
city's
city.
back on that one, yeah. I wouldn't mind mowing it for you once a week, but
And then at what point in the development would the park be a go?
well, that's an interesting question. Typically, Renown's marching orders is always build the amenity first and the people will come. We have a situation here, though, again, where Renown may not be the ultimate builder or developer, and or we have a Williamson Act issue, and we'll go into that a little bit more in depth. In this park design, we've also tried to incorporate the gazebo. We'd like to do some concert in the park type things. We'd like to develop that old style community park, flagpoles, a place, a meeting place. It has your typical tot lot, the gymboree and the chimpanzee bars and slides and things for the younger children, and a place for the mothers to meet and talk about motherly things. And we've also been asked at the Planning Commission, is there going to be lights? You know, it's always our assumption that around the walkways, you know, there would be some type of low vapor light. You know, we don't need the median type light, but we do believe there would be like the old style gas lamp lights or something to cast some light on the property.
Is there anything to buffer the noise where the skateboards would be at? I mean, I don't know how wide that street is there.
Well, all the streets around the property we have widened so that we have off-street parking. Typically, the front part of your home with the garage and then with the stones and mirror that's put on creates a considerable buffer of noise. You know, that is a concern, you know, especially now up in Tracy that school's out. You know, we notice some of the younger kids are out a little bit later and riding their skateboards. We assume that the city has curfews or would mandate something or post something at this site. The same with the baseball fields. You know, we're not proposing, you know, AA baseball out there with lights and Jack Thurman Field or whatever it is over here in Modesto. We're hoping that it's T-ball up to 13, 15-year-olds, and, you know, that they can accommodate each other with the layout of the facility, you know, dual sets of base pegs, lay it out so that both boys and girls of all ages can use it. And then obviously the soccer field, we believe that we've went to a much older age soccer field that can be pared down. There can also be another soccer field between the outfields of the other baseball fields. Just kind of determines what your recreation leagues here in Newman would like to do with that. Typically we like to meet not only with Parks and Rec, but we like to meet with whoever the presidents of your sports leagues are and make sure that we're trying to develop something along with their concerns.
A question.
Mm-hmm.
Whether Renown builds it or not, is that the way the park is going to be?
Well, the park ultimately is up to the Planning Commission and your direction, your city staff's direction. It's a city park. It's also up to the residents of Newman. This is just a conceptual idea. You know, we've listened to the community, we've looked at some of the steering documents in place, and we've come up with this idea. No, this may not be ultimately what is built. You know, this would be similar to the Barrington Avenue Park, which was built in stages. That particular developer was given some direction. They hired a firm, matter of fact, the same firm, Ripley Design Group, to design the park at Barrington Avenue, and that was a direct result of what the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Planning Commission, and City Council gave them direction on. So again, this is conceptually for you to get an idea of what you can do with this 9.21 acres, but ultimately it's the residents of Newman and the governing bodies to come up with, you know, development plans.
Getting back to the when in this development would the park be built, this being a storm retention unit also, wouldn't the basic grading and landscaping have to be done as one of the first things before you, you know, as you build?
It depends on the number of units, and again, you get out of tentative map issues and get into final map design and engineer run closure issues. Could be a certain amount of units built before this detention basin would have to be built. There's also a storm drainage channel that runs along the ring road that will ultimately run out to the wasteway. That could accommodate a lot of this water. This is pretty much an overflow basin. That way, if we have those El Nino type storms instead of the water backing up in the streets like it does at Driscoll Avenue, it would back into this park basin and then be metered out. And we're anticipating that the water would be in there no more than 24 hours.
Yeah, I did notice it says the project is outside the 100-year floodplain. Is that correct?
That is correct. Now, most of the valley engineering is based upon the 10-year storm. And as we know from the past few years, this year I assume that we were on a normal rainfall year. We didn't have any problems within Lucas Ranch. It's those El Nino type storms or those freak type storms that we do have some problems. Anywhere that you have flat ground, you have that condition.
I have,
Go ahead, Dave.
okay. I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Not relating to the park, and it's probably a little premature. But one of the problems in the environmental report was the air quality. And one of the things that was in here mentioned household fireplaces. Wood-burning fireplaces are one of the biggest polluters in the valley here. And I was wondering if you have any idea what these houses would they have wood-burning fireplaces? Could they be gas-burning fireplaces to eliminate a lot of that problem, or?
Well, that's an excellent question, and over the last 3 years, the industry has been moving towards eliminating wood-burning fireplaces. We've actually had people try to cook in fireplaces that were built in the home, so you never know ultimately how many trash burners you're going to get in a subdivision, how many people are going to do their ethnic cooking in it. We would prefer, obviously, gas-type units. Again, there's another resource that we're getting very short on, and that's wood, even firewood. We don't want this property to impact or have an environmental impact, and that would be something that would have to be determined. Again, that's probably an item that would be dealt with during the final map engineering. Also, that's a statewide mandate. It's a state still, and Kelly may be able to speak a little bit more or more professionally than I can in regards to the fireplace and the issue on the pollution of it. Yeah. And we've heard for the last 3 years they're going to outlaw them. Typically, again, Renown as a builder, they would build a fireplace in as standard. They would not charge an additional or extra fee as some of the starter home builders do. I do know from a project that my brother's building for them in Folsom, they are incorporating more gas appliance type units for the same reason that you suggested. Again, if the council or planning commission would want to make that a condition, from Renown's standpoint, I don't think there would be a problem with that.
It was just a thought on down the road to look at before actual construction would start. So, thank you.
They're nice to look at, but they are a chore to keep clean. So.
Any other questions? No other questions?
How about the ring road? Do we want to throw out the sacrificial lamb? We spent a lot of long nights on the ring road over there. I hate to just see it disappear on us. We've called it the Parkway, and we've also taken it upon ourselves to name it the Sherman Parkway. We don't expect the City Council, Planning Commission, or all the residents of Newman to name the entire ring road or parkway the Sherman Parkway, but we do believe that there are segments within Newman, and we would like to recommend and suggest to both the Planning Commission and Council that the segment of the parkway from Hills Ferry Road to Highway 33 along the boundaries of the California Scottish Rite Foundation property and the Sherman property be designated as the Sherman Parkway. Okay. We've also recommended to the Planning Commission and City Council and city residents that the park be named the William Ray Sherman Memorial Park for the fact that it's named after a gentleman that was a pioneer here in civil engineering. Spent a lot of time, as our understanding was quite good at predicting earthquakes and was quite a local historian, and we would recommend to the Council and Planning Commission that it also be named after William Ray Sherman.
Okay.
Sounds reasonable.
Any project, you always have problems. The one problem that we had with this particular property is we could not achieve the densities that the city set forth. And it's very seldom that a builder or developer will stand up before a governing body and say, we couldn't get those number of units. Usually they just start drawing lines and they find a way to get those number of units. They actually, on most cases, want to exceed the number of units. On this particular property, we've listened to our consumer. You know, everyone wants that 3-car garage, that big single-story profile home. On our low-density residential lots, as you may know, our smallest lot is 6,500 and our largest is 13,600 square feet. In most cases, our minimums are 7,200 square feet. And again, with the City of Newman public standards in regards to street widths and cul-de-sac lengths, we just could not achieve the density. So the city wanted a lot more units than what we're proposing. We came up considerably short. I believe that information is in your initial study, and I think Bob has presented that information to you. That was pretty much the only problem that we had in planning this. Again, in the general plan process, anytime the city asked us to provide documentation or specific plans, we did so. This is a culmination of about 8 different plans. We feel that obviously we have natural boundaries with Lucas Ranch, and we have Barrington Avenue, we have the Sherman Parkway, and we have Hills Ferry Road. One of the things that we didn't mention on the park, we wanted the people to understand that Newman is a living community, a family community, and as they come in on Hills Ferry Road, we've eliminated the sound wall at the park site location and created a view space into that park with split rail or conventional ranch-style fencing. And we think that's a nice statement. Once they get past the stench of the Tartaric plant out there, we're hoping that they will see that we are a good living community and we have open space and parks and, that we are a family-style community. Newman, as far as I'm concerned, is the best-kept secret on the west side. I've also heard a question earlier, about when this would be built. Our only goal at this point is to get a tentative map. It's basically to create a book value. Renown again purchased this property 9 years ago. It is time to do something with the property. Tentative map is the first hurdle. From a builder's standpoint, we believe with the growth that's occurring in the East Bay and the job production and the movement of that towards the Central Valley, that Newman could probably anticipate anywhere from 75 to 150 homes a year, probably for the next 10 to 15 years. And we also believe that's a far cry short of what the population predictions. I think during the general plan process, we actually looked at a population of 25,000, and we're going to fall well short of that. And that's a good thing.
Okay. Any questions for Mike? Any other questions?
It looks as though the Sherman Parkway is about the width of Driscoll. Am I looking at that right?
Oh, I think it's larger. I don't
Is
know
it
if
wider?
you have...
I've got this vesting kind of...
It connects all the way from the highway all the way around to Hills Ferry.
Yeah, if you look at the Sherman Parkway section on page 2 there.
Sheila?
Oh, I'm sorry.
What it would eventually do is it would connect from Highway 33, go all the way around, and connect to Hills Ferry.
Would there be a
Right.
center divider in there?
Yes, there would
So
be a
it'd
center
4
divider
lanes?
and left turn lane. It also, we've incorporated a storm drain channel, bike lane, pedestrian walkway. One of the reasons, too, with the storm drain channel, after seeing the community fight the floodwaters with these El Nino storms, we came up with a concept that we had to get out here and capture the water before it got into the city and damaged our merchants and downtown businesses. So we developed and engineered this storm drain channel to take the water around the city so where we could pick it up off Highway 33 under the railroad tracks, take it around the city of Newman, and ultimately get it into the wasteway. We also understand that they're working on a possible dam and some other alternatives upstream to create this flow of water from coming into the city of Newman, but we felt that this was an interim objective that we wanted to try to obtain and protect our downtown businesses. 2, I would just say that, whenever we're back before you, our entire design team will be here, Ripley Design Group, our designer of the parks, and also our overall master landscape plan, storm drain channel, our engineer, Thompson Heisel, civil engineers out of Modesto. Our attorney is here this evening, not only our corporate attorney, but our project attorney, George Petrolakis. he'll be here to discuss a little bit with you about the Williamson Act issues, and he can so tonight if you so wish. And we'll have the gang all here, and you can ask all the questions that you want. And again, once we get a tentative map for the build-out process, there's still a final map process where our design team has to work with your staff and design team to ultimately get to a final map and a buildable subdivision.
Okay.
Members of our community will be watching this on closed circuit TV tomorrow evening, or on TV tomorrow evening. Hopefully many of them will be. Can they visit your offices to look close up at these?
Absolutely. Our typical business hours are 8:30 to 4:30. We usually spend the mornings on site, and if I would have known that, I would have dressed a little better. I had no idea I was going to be on TV. Hi, Mom.
I would advise them though, because of our hectic schedule now with what we're doing here and in some other areas of the valley, that if they would call first, just to ensure that we're there, we'll be more than happy to open our doors and make sure that we can accommodate any questions.
Our phone number
Well,
is
and
209.
go ahead.
209-862-3595. And we're really interested in the public input. You know, we're used to having 70 to 100 people show up to these type of meetings, and you know, we're a little light tonight, but again, with this being shown on TV, hopefully we'll get some of the public input and direction.
And one of the things we can do is also, before this comes back to us, again, what we could do is really advertise it in the newspaper, talk to Dean about it, and possibly see if we could get more residents to come out if they have any comments or questions on this.
Yeah, because it makes a better end result and a better project for the city, the more public input that we can receive. Right. And the Matos newspapers has run a couple of articles on it. And again, you only want to be in a public window for so long, but you know, we're in it and we're prepared to answer what questions we can. And again, whenever we come back before you, and it's not a workshop, we will have our entire team here, and they will be able to act on technical specific questions and or more site-related questions.
Okay.
I know that one of the things that the people watching are going to say immediately, the first thing that's going to come to their mind is, they're building more houses, we need schools. That's what they're going to say. So I think that maybe we should make a comment regarding that to kind of give them some peace of mind regarding the potential for schools that we need desperately. Anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'd be glad to comment on that. As you may be able to see on the front of your map there, over on Barrington Avenue, there is a proposed elementary school of 11.6 acres. And this particular property, we have committed and dedicated ourselves to work with the City of Newman and also the Newman Crows Landing School District to ultimately see that an elementary school is built on that particular site. It's our understanding that is their A site. Initially, whenever they were looking at sites, the Sherman Ranch was considered as a B site, and it was our understanding that it was dropped, and we got the park site, the larger community park site. We want to see that elementary school built over there, and we're going to do our best. And I think the mayor, in meetings with him, has committed himself to working with the school district, and the council has committed themselves to working and seeing an elementary school. It's long overdue, and it's a very good and valid point. Thank you.
Just one comment also, Councilmember Altamiller. We have been bringing, as well as the developer, I know has met with the school superintendent, I believe, and the city has also, to make sure that they are well aware of this process and are kept up to speed throughout. So they're aware of it. So.
It's even our understanding now that there's beginning to be some private money out there for the development of schools, not just public or state monies. And that might be something that could possibly speed the process up on the elementary school. Getting the traffic lights along Highway 33 has obviously saved ultimately an accident. You know, we come down here, and when school's in session, we see a lot of children crossing the streets. Thank God for the street lights. But, you know, with the growth and development that's going to go on that side of town, there is a need for an elementary school. And it'd be nice to build a new school. I mean, I'd love for my kids to go to a new school. We have all kinds of them in Tracy, and we're still going to the old one, so we must be in the wrong neighborhood. So,
Okay. If there are no other questions, I want to, on behalf of the City Council, thank you both, and Mr. Sherman for coming here tonight on this project. We are very appreciative of the straightforwardness of your presentation you know, as you all know, there sometimes tends to be a lot of going back and forth on things, and the process ends up taking longer than it really should. And I would hope that, you know, that others in this county would look at this and talk with you guys and figure out that this is the best way to get through a city council and a planning commission is in a straightforward manner where we're all working together on. But again, I want to compliment you both on how thorough this was, and we look forward to working with you on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, they used to draw them on napkins, was our understanding, in the 60s and 70s, and dark bars. So this is Y2K planning. I don't know if you'll ever see a tentative map process with this much information, but we appreciate it, and it makes our job easier. Also, too, I'd like to introduce, again, George Petrolakis, our corporate and project attorney. If there's any questions on the Williamson Act, if you'd like to address those to him at this time, or we can wait until we're back before you at our next meeting.
If any council members have any questions with regards to Williamson Act, or if you'd like to hold it over until Bob does a little bit more background on it, and or since George did come all the way out here, if you have any questions for him, feel free to ask.
Don't make any up if you don't know.
I suppose the obvious question for me might be, I'm not even sure what the Williamson Act is. What?
Preservation of ag land.
Why don't we let George just come up for just a few minutes, and maybe he can give you a little background and also talk about the 3 different contracts that are on the Sherman Ranch.
I know you charge by the hour, George, so I'm going to ask you to keep it brief for the sake of your clients.
Actually, Mike knew that I was dying because this is my coming out party with my own law firm. So the only reason he's making me get up here is so I can say I'm George Petrolakis from Petrolakis, Jensen, and Friedrich. This is a little bit of a change for me. It's a pleasure to be out here. I haven't been out here for quite some time, and I will definitely try to keep it short on the Williamson Act and just give you a little bit of background that your city attorney is probably better equipped to give than I, but I'll do it since I got to do that free advertisement for Petrolakis, Jensen, and Friedrich.
What was that?
Since it's appearing on TV tomorrow night. The Williamson Act was passed in the 1960s in California in response to the conversion of agricultural land. Now remember, way back when in the 50s and 60s, California had these growth patterns that, you know, you kind of almost read about in the history books today. You know, San Jose and Los Angeles, those real speculative deals where somebody would go out and tie out ground, and they would do a sort of a finger annexation. You know, the city limits out to Long Beach are like this wide, right, for the city of Los Angeles out to the harbor. You know, so because California was growing in that way, there were a number of responses to that, you know, in the state legislature. One of them was the creation of LAFCOs, the local agency formation commissions, which handle annexations now. And remember what LAFCOs do, they sort of make sure that growth and annexation is orderly and makes sense and all of that, and no county islands, you know, all that stuff you guys hear about with LAFCO. Another response to those developments, which was particular to agricultural land, was the passage of the Williamson Act. And what the Williamson Act does, basically, it allows a landowner to enter into a contract which restricts the use of the property. So a landowner, a farmer will go in and sign up with the county usually and sign a contract that says, for 10 years, I'm going to restrict this ground to basically agricultural use. In return for that, they get their property assessed at a lower value. So they pay, you know, less property tax. So that's the theory. And it's for that very important goal of sort of, you know, preserving agricultural land. Now, when it was first passed, and this is how it sort of, you know, applies to this project, since the 60s, the concern in the legislature has grown over conversion of agricultural land to non-agricultural uses. And with the passage last year of what's called the Super Williamson Act, I really think finally with that, and you cities will see this in the future, I think it's almost tipped too far the other way. Because with the Super Williamson Act, which counties have to apply, and you put the land under contract for 20 years, you know, that's really, if people start using that, that's going to give landowners around the city really effective veto power almost over growth and development, okay? And cities are going to have a hard time dealing with that. But when the act was first passed, they did a pretty smart thing, I think, which is they allowed a provision that allowed a city such as yours to what was called protest the imposition of the contract. And what it was is, if a contract was within a certain range of your existing city limits, a mile, when the landowner went and put the contract under contract, the city could pass a resolution saying, well, wait a minute, we protest because, to have normal, orderly growth in our city, we want to grow out there someday. Okay, and that no longer exists. But the vast majority of this project, that process was properly gone through by a predecessor council to yours way back in 1971. So what that allows this city to do is sort of go through this whole planning process and annexation process, and it's almost as if, poof, because of a very wise action taken many years ago by a predecessor city council in Newman, that land can come in for your orderly development and your economic development. As was alluded to earlier, there's about a 20-acre parcel of this project that doesn't have that benefit, and then there are different procedures that will have to be gone through. And let me just short-circuit that, because a discussion of that won't really be helpful tonight. And basically, I will work with your city attorney to make sure that the process can be properly gone through to what's called cancel that contract if need be. Or, and I should have summarized this before, there are two ways to get out of a contract. One is what's called filing a notice of non-renewal, and when a landowner does that, the contract on its own expires after 10 years. Okay, because otherwise it's just a rolling 10-year term. The contract always stays good for 10 years out unless you file a notice of non-renewal. The other way is what's called cancellation, and both of these now are really the exclusive methods of getting rid of contracts, except for some of these older contracts that were protested, as most of this property was. So the cancellation, frankly, is pretty stringent, and it's pretty tight, and basically, we've got to sort of think it through, and I've taken a preliminary look at it. I think that this acreage would be subject to proper cancellation if the certain very stringent findings can be made, and I think they can be made. But, to sort of give you shorthand on it, I've got to convince your city attorney that I'm right about that, and if he's not convinced, it's not going to happen. But I'm pretty sure I'm right, and, hear that, Tom? I'm pretty sure I'm right. So, and that's the process that'll go through. So that's a little more convoluted maybe than it needed to be, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it. But that's basically what the Williamson Act's about. And my personal editorial is it's gotten so tight now with the passage of this new act last year that cities such as yours, aren't going to be able to do what that council did, almost 30 years ago, which is really look out with foresight and decide, where the city's going to be for the next 30 years. And that, in the end will cause difficulty, and then there'll be more legislative changes because you know how this all works. So, thank you.
Any questions for George? No? Thank you, George. Other than that, again, I want to thank those involved in this project. I want to, again, remind the citizens at home that are watching this to stay tuned. We will be forthcoming with information as we get it when we have meetings coming up. That way all of our citizens can participate in this process. Again, thank you. Moving on to item 9D. This resolution number 99, next to number, a resolution designating the loading zone on Patchett Drive in front of Von Renner School. Mike?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Basically, this came about from a letter from the principal, John Paiva, at the Von Renner Elementary School. And basically what we're looking at is we're wanting they were requesting a change of an existing portion of a loading zone on the south curb of Patchett Drive. They wish to have this change from a loading zone to a no parking zone or a red zone. The area affected, it says 80 feet, but actually I think my measurement was a little wrong because it actually came out to 51 feet. On the south curb of Patchett Drive, just east of the crosswalk of S Street, to the entrance of the off-street student drop-off pickup lane. There is additional approximately, it says 120 feet, but it's actually 170 feet of this loading zone, which stretches from the off-street parking student drop-off pickup lane entrance to the exit, and the school would like to retain this area. This would resolve a parking problem around the school when school's let out each day. This area is coned off each day by students, student crossing guards, staff, because the vehicles in this area create a visual obstruction when they do park there. In researching this, though, I was finding that I couldn't find when this original loading zone was put in place. I guess it's at least 30 years old, according to what the school is telling me. But there was a change in '93 in which, if you look at the attached map that I have here, this was the student drop-off pickup zone that was put in place. And that was done in '93, and that was about the only other change that they had in the area. If you've ever gone to on Patchett Drive there in front of Ron Renner, anytime between about 7:45 or around 3 o'clock when school lets out, there's about 650 kids. Not that all the parents are trying to pick up these kids at that same, all of them at that same time, because they do bust a few out. But parking, it gets to be a real premium in that area, and picking up these children, even with that pickup zone, it gets very congested. So that's why they're also wanting to retain the loading zone.
Well, plus this would free up some space right there by where the buses are at.
That's correct.
Because that's the problem right there, is right there where the buses are at.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and they're also, like I said, that's the things that we're wanting to do. But we're wanting to make this so the residents in the area can also utilize this area. So we're looking at proposing signage be put in the remaining loading zone area that would read from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. School lets out about 3. That would leave a little extra time for parents to get in and out of there. I think about 3:15. I think it's about 15 minutes. They're just in and out of there, Monday through Friday. So that would free up this area for residents in the area to utilize this for parking when school's not in session. Keep in mind this is a year-round school, so it's utilized pretty much throughout the year. So my recommendation is basically that the first 51 feet of the current loading zone be changed to a red zone or no parking zone, and that the remaining loading zone be formally adopted by resolution. The signs be erected for the loading zone, limiting the time zone, and this would be in effect from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Chief, you said, right now you said 51 feet or 80 feet?
It reads 80 feet, but it's actually, for the resolution, I'd like to have that changed to 51 feet.
Okay.
I must have been triple doing my feet when I was measuring that out there.
Okay, so it's 51
It's
feet.
51 feet for the red zone and 170 feet for the remaining portion of that loading zone. That would take it from the entrance to the exit of that student pickup drop-off point.
Okay. Are there any questions for the Chief of Police?
Yeah, Mike, you mentioned before about that the people were dropping off the kids about 7:45 to something like that, and the signs are 8 to 4. Could maybe change the sign to 7:30 to 4 or something
That is
like
something
that?
that we could do, yes.
Otherwise, you'd be able to run into a problem there if they start dropping off a quarter till. So
that's very good. Yeah, we could probably change it to even 7:30 would probably be fine.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Can we have some direction on this item, please?
Move that we adopt resolution formally adopt a loading zone with proper signage and changing a portion of this loading zone to a red zone. Did I do that right?
Second.
Yeah, as amended to 7:30 instead of 8 o'clock on
Yes.
the signs.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Item 9E, this is to discuss, review, and provide direction of funding options for the Newman's business community in general and for M&M Chevrolet specifically. Cleve?
I'm going to let Margaret handle most of this, and I'll add as I need to. Sure. That's all right.
The city has received on 2 different occasions a request to assist a local business owner in his venture to relocate a business. And this isn't the only request we've had. We've had other business people through the course of the year or two also asking for city assistance in their business enterprise. Staff has looked into various possibilities of how assistance in a financial nature could occur, and I've presented a few of them that we've come up with. First of all, you are aware that the City of Newman has a redevelopment bond. We received $3.5 million in cash. that bond is tax exempt. And what that means is that the proceeds from that bond can only be used on public property, on public projects, downtown streetscape, flood control, sidewalks, community buildings. There is a clause in the agreement to do that that allows 5% of these cash proceeds to be used for the private sector, and that amounts to $175,000. If the council wishes, they could establish a fund by resolution stating that how this money should be used by the private sector. They need to establish strict guidelines on how it's to be administered, and it needs to be a program that could be applicable to any folks who wish to apply for it. The amount that it is limited to strictly $175,000, period. No more money from the bond can be funneled into this particular fund. There is a draft resolution and a draft proposal that follows under your redevelopment meeting, board meeting item number 11, that you can explore this specifically. But that's about the only thing we can do with bond money. Also, using the bond money, there is a possibility, instead of creating loans, that the city could provide write-down. That's when the interest that a particular party gets from a lending institution is at one rate, and the city opts to help write that down. In this case, the request that received was for $150,000 for a 12-year period. The interest of 3% would amount to $29,000. If it were at a typical commercial rate, and I don't know how close this is, but I figured it at 12%, it would be $117,000. That means the write-down amount that the city could contribute to this venture is $85,000. But there's three things we must keep in mind before you explore this particular option. One, and the most important, is that this type of assistance, again, has to come from that 5% pool, which total amount is only $175,000. Secondly, the difference between the two would be $85,000, and that would mean it would be an $85,000 grant, which would not be replayed to the fund, and it would not become a revolving loan fund that other folks could draw from. So that's about all discussion that there is before you tonight on the bond proceeds. Typically, the type of help that the redevelopment agency does give to the private sector is a partnership in which the city purchases the property and perhaps cleans it up and prepares it and improves it, and then either sells it or leases it to the private party. And this falls within RDA guidelines 100% and is totally appropriate. But apparently this particular item has not come up, and it doesn't seem to be, it wasn't addressed as far as I understand. Now, other than RDA, the only other source of funding for assisting our business people could be the city applying for CDBG funds, the community block grant funds. This is issued through HCD, as are our current rehab loan programs. Currently, today, matter of fact, we received the announcement that the grants are available for 3 different categories, and one of them is business loans. We could apply for up to $500,000. We could get a consultant to do the proper studies and write the grant. We could get a grant to write the grant, which would assist the city, so that way we wouldn't have to pay anything. Well, we would have to pay a 10% match, but that's all that we would have to pay to go through this endeavor of applying for the grant. The city did a similar project in 1994 where we did get a planning and technical assistance grant to explore the possibility of applying for a $300,000 small business revolving loan. At that time, the city chose not to pursue that because some of the criteria that was imposed to getting that $300,000 was rather steep. And in that particular case, it was guaranteeing the formation of at least 14 jobs. And if we don't meet these criteria after receiving the funds, it puts all our future funding for CDBG grants in jeopardy, because when they award the grants, it's based on your prior year performances, and these performance marks are critical in a competitive cycle of getting funding. So in this particular case, and it may not, this is one of the general suggestions, if this is something that interests council, if given direction, staff can create RFPs trying to find a pool of consultants that would be qualified to write the grant, and also to do update the studies to make sure we can justify the application to HCD. Then we could apply for the Planning and Technical Assistance Grant to pay for that consultant to write the application for the big grant and also complete and update the studies. And then thirdly, we would actually apply for the grant. They're due September 10th and will be notified in the middle of November if we can be awarded up to the $500,000. And so whatever.
Are there any questions for Margaret?
What's the usual time frame from the application to the grant actually receiving the grant?
Well, we will know if we were awarded the grant in November. That's quite short compared to our housing grants, but it still takes a month or two at least to receive a fully executed agreement, which is necessary before we spend a dime.
Is this a pretty competitive grant process?
Yes,
or?
I believe it is. Yes.
Other questions? Is there interest on behalf of the council to pursue applying for this revolving loan fund?
I think it's worth a try. We're looking at
Absolutely.
quite a bit of money available.
Okay. You have a... go ahead.
One other question, just I have to think about this. One of the, I forget which one it was now, but one of the things that you mentioned that there had to be 14 newly created jobs, and they wouldn't consider retention of 14 jobs.
This was a criteria of over 6 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Or 5 years ago. And I have they change every
Entirely
year.
different now, okay.
Correct. And they might not even use jobs as a criteria this year. But it's whatever objective they want to achieve. If it's their purpose to give this money because maybe they want to do it to eliminate blight this year. So that can become one of their priorities.
We won't know that until we were to apply
Till we
for
actually get the application and work it out. That's the purpose of the grant writer. To establish, to know what their need is and to show that we meet it.
Okay.
Well,
I understand.
all I can say is that, as we all know here, that the retention and creation of new jobs in this community is sorely needed. And if we could possibly have another funding source to help in that, then I certainly think we need to go down that road. Okay, so with regards to that, there's consensus from the council to recommend that we
Do you have any
pursue this.
input on that, please?
No, really what we would be looking at this time is we would, staff can go ahead and solicit RFPs to find a grant writer. Someone can do the grant, but also can look at this feasibility study again and update that so that we can see, as you know, last time we did the feasibility study and decided not to go for the grant. Again, we want to look at that. At that point, we can look and see what the guidelines are for the grant at this time and then decide whether or not the council wants to go for that. So.
Okay. Margaret, on the one of the things I did want to ask on the on your report here, actually this is Cleve's report, but with the regards to the use of this 5% for private sector development, could we, and I know currently the property tax increment that we're receiving is going towards paying the bond, probably about, what was it, Cleve, 90%?
At least.
At least. About
The
90%
first
or
few
so.
years.
Now, when we start getting going a little bit and we start having a little bit more increment coming in, could we use some of that property tax increment to continue to use it towards economic development, some type of loan fund that we're talking about here, to add to this 5% on property tax increment above and beyond when we're paying back with the property tax increment?
I believe with the increment, yes, because it would be
Right.
similar to our facade program.
Okay.
It does not have the restrictions that the bond has on it. The increment doesn't.
Okay. So the increment could be added to this. Okay. If there are, let's see. So if there are no other questions with regards to this general part of it, can you have the direction as far as the RFP and so forth. Can we now go into the M&M Chevrolet project? Cleve, you want to give a brief overview of it?
Well, that's really comes under the next, under 11B, right, Margaret, is where we really, if you want to take action on that. Other than, if the council would like us to pursue more this request at looking at using this as a loan write-down. Staff is not recommending that right now because under the scenario that Margaret presented, that would require us to use about $85,000. Is that correct, Margaret?
Well,
of that $175,000 that we have available.
Well, one of the things that I'm interested in, because I know that time is of the essence here on the move of this business, and I know Mr. Bigelow's been very patient. I know we've been thorough as we could on this, but what I was hoping to do tonight was to establish this, and I guess it is going to be under 11B. Could we go ahead and table this and move forward through here, 10A, 10B, then approve this resolution authorizing this establishment of this revolving business loan program, putting this $175,000 in there, and then coming back to Mr. Bigelow's request and funding some type of a loan? Do we need to establish this first and then authorize a loan?
Really, the action you need to take is under 11B. You do not need to come back to this item to do more.
Okay.
Once you establish that, staff will proceed to
Well,
the necessary things to allow that to happen.
Okay, because what I was interested, though, in doing tonight, because, as I said, I've been working with Mr. Bigelow for a month or two now, at least, and as I've said, his intention is to be into that site at the very beginning of September.
Right.
And he really needs to get going on that project. And, as we've discussed, this is a very good project. It's going to be what could ultimately become a bigger dealership. And I know one of the things that Councilmember Radford has mentioned was with regards to the consistency of these types of loans. I will say that Mr. Bigelow has supplied us with information. He has been forthcoming with all the information that we have asked of him, and I want to thank him for that. But I was hoping that we could possibly set a dollar amount tonight.
That is under 11B. It sets the figure of $50,000
Oh, okay.
for each loan is what we're recommending anyway.
Okay.
Now, council can change those, but under 11B it sets that. And
let me double check
if that item is approved under 11B, you can adopt that resolution. It will set aside the $175,000 for that purpose, and then staff can proceed. We do have to set up the application process. We don't have all of that finalized, but that is something that we can easily do and have ready to go.
How soon could we do this for Mr. Bigelow as far as just getting this thing rolling here?
Well, the final thing is there'll be some information that will be required for him to supply, a normal application process, just like we would do when we go through a loan, except that we can process it a lot faster than what he has run into with a bank loan. I think that we can get it fairly quickly,
Yeah.
Margaret.
The critical point is that council agrees to the terms of of this program.
Okay.
So you agree
Sure.
to this program, and then we'll come with the first application, which would be Mr. Bigelow.
And when could that? I'm just looking for a time frame here, just because the time is of the essence on this project here, and I'm trying to get this.
I realize that, and we can commit for that loan application to be approved at your next meeting, I think.
The next meeting?
If the
Well,
council-
that's
If you
2
approve
weeks,
the
though.
terms
Could we?
today.
Well, all right. Why don't we go ahead and do that, and then what I'll request at the end of the meeting is that we possibly have a special meeting, if we could, next week. Then, just because, as I've said, Mr. Bigelow wants to be into this site September 1st, and he's been waiting a couple of months already, and I'm afraid that if we don't move on this thing, that he's not going to be finished with this project. And as we all know, we're trying to shoot for economic development here. This project on that corner piece over there is going to be a great development. And as far as I'm concerned, any economic development in town that provides this type of sales tax would, for me, warrant even holding a special meeting just to make sure that this thing gets approved.
The only question will be is whether or not we can pull all the loan information together, and that, you know, we're willing to work with Lloyd if we can do that. I mean, we still have to get the application together and do that, but if the council directs us to do that, we'll do what we can to pull everything together to get that approved. But
I won't be able to I'm not gonna be here next week, so.
okay,
I
but
wouldn't
there
be-
will be things that'll be required, Margaret, if you can help me out as far as the necessary information in order to issue a loan, similar to what we.
Could
do
we
for the
allow,
facade
could we
program.
give staff some discretion and some latitude on that? I mean, if we, unless the council feels uncomfortable with this development project, could we,
We need to approve the program first.
okay, all right, why don't
It's only
we,
gonna be 2 weeks, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, till the
Well,
next meeting.
well, but we're looking at July coming up here, and this, you know, this needs to be not completely
Right.
done, but we're talking about September 1st for a moving date, and that doesn't leave much time. Why don't we go ahead and do that then? Is there any other comments on this?
On 9E. We will
On 9E.
move to 11B.
Okay, if there are no other, to 10A, to adjourn to meet as the Newman Public Financing Agency. May we have a roll call, please?
Present.
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 Present. Item 10B, this adopt resolution number 99, next number of the Board of Directors of the Newman Public Financing Authority, refinancing of 1991 certificates of participation relating to wastewater treatment plant project, including approval of documents and actions relating to sale of not to exceed 3.6 million, refunding certificates of participation. This is basically what we've approved already, right, Margaret? It's just
Now you're acting
format.
as the Newman
Okay.
Public Finance Authority.
Can we have some direction on this item, please?
To read the whole thing.
No, you could just adopt resolution number 99, next number.
Move that we adopt resolution 99 next number.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. This time we'll adjourn to meet as the Newman Redevelopment Agency. May we have a roll call, please?
Present.
Still here.
Present.
Present.
Present. Item 11B, this approve a resolution authorizing the establishment of a revolving business loan program. Okay, I guess we're finally where where we needed
you
to
wanna
be.
be.
Sure. Okay. The thing I was suggesting is the fact that with regard to this project, we've gotten a lot of the information. I've talked to Mr. Bigelow. I feel comfortable with the direction that this project is going to be moving in. What I'm requesting, though, is that within this 2-week time period, I'd like to see Mr. Bigelow get started immediately on this thing. But could we give our direction on this particular proposal and allow the staff some latitude in approving?
Lloyd, please,
Pardon?
he wants to talk.
Oh, okay. Come on. Could you state your name for the record, please? Name and address for the record.
Lloyd Bigelow at 1303 N Street in Newman. The proposed 2 weeks time as far as the next council meeting, if what we need to do is go through a plain process, paperwork process, I think that would be okay. I don't, if we can do it then, because I'm leaving tomorrow and I'll be gone for a week anyway. Okay, I have a lot of things lined out that are going to be done while I'm gone. I've applied for the building permit today. Some of the things are going to start. I've already been down there. We're starting to work on it already. I've got commitments. September is not nearly enough time for me to do what I need to do. I've been dragging my feet. This process, I'm sorry, I didn't know the government process. It has taken me, I don't know how much longer than I thought it would take. Okay, but I do want to comment. The project is going to be good. It'll clean up a corner. It'll clean up probably one of the most visible corners that you have in the city of Newman. I think you'll be proud, and I think the residents of Newman will be proud when this is all completed. But if you're saying that in 2 weeks you get together and you can vote and we can get this thing one way or the other, yes, yes or no, I think that would be adequate, because I'm going to be gone for a week. You're going to need some personal stuff from me, probably, or from the business. My office managers certainly give you information on the business, but if you need it from me, or you need me to sign any paperwork, I won't be here until July 1. Okay, I don't know when your next meeting is.
It's actually 3 weeks. isn't
Oh,
it?
it's 3 weeks away.
No.
Actually, yeah, because we have 5 weeks in June.
Well, I could probably do some of this by fax. Okay, if
Our next meeting is July 13th.
I'm sure my office manager could do a lot. Okay, so maybe
Why don't we do this, because why don't we just go ahead and I want to request that we have a special meeting next week. Under one item, we have the details of the general program that we adopt, and then we work with Mr. Bigelow. I know he'll be out of town. His office will be able to get us a lot of the information. And then after we have the item that we approve of the details of the general program, then we move to adopt approval of that particular item, if we can do that.
Well, really what needs to be done, the item that you need to adopt will be approval of his loan.
Okay.
And we cannot bring that back to you. I almost guarantee you we cannot have all the paperwork ready for that adoption in 1 week. Unless Lloyd can move really fast, because there is some information that needs to be gathered. Yeah, and we would need it by Friday in order to put out an agenda on that. And I just don't see that we can gather that much information in that amount of time.
Do you know what kind of information you need? Do you have any
Margaret,
idea?
can you?
Well, I guess we could
anyway,
have
okay.
we could have this first.
Like I say, we can try, but I don't see that there's any way. And you're going to be gone next week, you say, Lloyd?
I'm going to be back July 1. I'm leaving first thing tomorrow morning and be back July 1, which is next Thursday. Next Thursday.
The earliest date that I would, if the council wants to schedule a meeting, the earliest date that I would recommend would be to consider July 6th, or July 5th, excuse me, which is the first Tuesday in July rather than the second Tuesday in July.
That's a Monday,
Yeah,
isn't it?
That's a holiday.
The 5th of
Excuse me, it
Monday?
is the 6th then. You're right, the 6th, excuse me, yeah. Yeah.
The 4th is on Sunday.
I guess the thing I'm
Yeah,
just
I'm
concerned is
back
that we're
by
getting
the-
awful close to that September 1st on that. But what's your feelings on it, Lloyd?
Well, July, is that when you vote? Is that when you would vote on the process? And
On July 6th, staff could, what we would commit to do between now and July 6th or July 13th, whatever it works out, is to prepare all the final details. We could also have you prepare the application and get the financial data and the application filled out by you, so that the process that would take place at the next meeting is that the council would first approve the final details of the program, the application process, etc. Then immediately following that, the same meeting, they could actually approve your application, so that immediately after that, it's a done deal.
okay, that's fine. Can I ask some questions? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit some lines of credit that I've already developed for my business and everything in order to get this thing going. Because July 3rd, July 6th, June 25th, June 23rd is too late. Okay, I mean, I've got to get moving on this project, and I've got to get moving while I'm gone. I've got things lined out, and I just have to get going. Do any of the council members or anybody have any questions or bad feelings about this project? I mean, I'll be happy to answer anything, any questions you have, and go through the whole project. I'll even take you down and show it to you.
Well, I think we want you down there. I don't think there's
Well,
no
it'll be
question
good for
about
the
that.
city.
Yeah.
It'll be good for the city, and I want you to. I'm not trying to get anything for nothing.
Well, one
You
of
know,
the things I'm encouraged about is that you're providing what information we're asking for, and you know, that's all I ask for is that, you know, we get the detail that we need to make the decision, and you're certainly providing that, so.
Okay. No, that'll be fine, because I'm going to commit everything I have to this down there, hoping that, you know, when we do get together and make this, that, you know, it's a positive thing, and we'll just go from there.
Okay. Thank you very much
You
for your
bet.
patience, Lloyd. Okay, at this time, can we have some direction on approval of the resolution authorizing the establishment of a revolving business loan program?
I so move for approval of a resolution authorizing the establishment of a revolving business loan program.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Are we?
Yeah.
Are those acceptable?
This 5%, the
5%.
175,000.
Right. If you look at Exhibit A, that's really what we're requesting that you approve, because
Right.
we need to write that up in the,
Yeah.
where the maximum loan
That's
amount
what
will be
I said.
$50,000, 5-year terms on the loan,
Mm-hmm.
3% below prime rate as far as the interest that would be on the loan, secured by some form of security there.
Right.
And then disbursement according to certain criteria that is listed there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
So we approve.
Write it up.
Okay, item number 12 is to reconvene to regular session. Item 13, items from city manager.
I don't have much. Just quickly, though, I'll mention that for your information, the Leprino sale did not go through. And there were some problems with the financing of the investor. However, as a result of what's been going on with that, we do have two other interested parties that are now looking at the facility, and we'll continue to work with them and hopefully be able to make something work out with them. So, one of the new parties is one of the contracts that was looking at being one of the businesses in there before, that now has an interest in being the principal investor in the project. So, we do have some other interest in it, but that one did fall through, and that sale will not go through right now. So,
Anything else? No.
that's all I have.
Councilmember Martina?
My pet project, the park. I was just wondering, maybe Ernie, if you could tell us where we're at as far as the park at this point. Apparently there's a number of areas that are not receiving water, or areas that are either hard pan or hard service and water stands on it.
I talked to the contractor earlier this evening about the park, and there does seem to have some low areas that has accumulated quite a bit of water, and so some of the grass hasn't really grown very well. There are some other bare spots in it. We also talked to him about, the city manager was talking with me this afternoon and mentioned that he had noticed a lot of that broadleaf weeds coming through. So I also asked him on that when would it be a good time to apply some pesticide, and he said that it would be best to wait until we mowed it, maybe a couple of times, and then did that. I also talked to him about fertilizing the grass. Initially, when he hydroseeded it, there was some fertilizer in with it, and he says that that is supposed to work on the root zone. If we were to apply fertilizer to the grass on the top area, which is nitrogen, that it would probably stress out the growth. So he's recommending that we wait on that. He went over and adjusted the watering schedule. He said that he was now going to have the water cycling, have it water every other day, and then he was going to have it off for the weekend, and then possibly early next week we would get in there and do our first cut. And then we would go back in there and look at some of the areas that didn't do so well and reseed those.
How about coverage as far as water coverage? Do we have some areas that are lacking as far as receiving water? Or?
No, what has happened in some of those areas is that the sprinkler head, you can go in there and adjust it, insert whatever nozzle you feel you want for whatever coverage. And they can put out anywhere from, I guess, 4 to 12 gallons per minute. And in some areas, I guess they didn't, the pattern was, didn't cover some of the areas. It was shooting it too far. And the field was too soggy for them to walk out there and to try to remove it and adjust those, put in the proper nozzles. So we're going to be doing that also this week. But no, the coverage is there.
Yeah. And anticipation of date as far as using the park?
He didn't want to give me a date on that yet, just yet.
I think we're fortunate that people haven't gone out there and attempted to use it.
No, we've had quite a problem with the kids tearing down the tape, but I haven't seen any footprints out there. They've thrown some bottles way out in there that we have to retrieve. But
well, thank you, Ernie.
Ernie, does the Labor Day weekend sound like time we possibly might get out on that, since they have these things going on?
Oh, I think we'll get on there much sooner than that.
Well, we have volleyball games on there during fall
Yeah, I mean,
festival.
the grass has to be in good shape for that.
Yeah. No, but I don't think it should be too long. I would go out on a limb and say that by the end of July we should be able to see some activity out there and be able to mow it and reseed some of the areas and make it usable.
Okay. Anything else, Bob?
Oh, that's all.
Okay. Councilmember Altamiller?
Nothing right now.
Nothing. Councilmember Radford?
I'll be attending the League Policy Committee meeting on Friday in San Jose on transportation, communications, and public works, and I'll bring back some notes. I won't report out, but if anyone's interested, I'll have lots of notes on the meeting. If there's anything truly interesting that comes out, I'll be sure to report it out to you. Okay. Another question. I had another question for Ernie. I should ask you to stay at the podium. Last year, it really worked well. We cleaned out that wasteway and of a lot of the overgrowth, and I think that really helped to prevent flooding in the Lucas Ranch area, in addition to the pump work that we did. Are we monitoring that? Are we going to monitor before fall, before the rainy season begins, to make sure, maybe we need to do a little more cleaning, just so we're ready for it, so it doesn't build up again?
Right. No, the whole channel to the east of Canal School Road has been dredged pretty deep. That's a big wide area. Over in where we were having some problems was the pipeline that was going across the wasteway and depositing the water over into the China Basin. What had happened is the Fish and Game had a ditch out there, and they put in some gates with those wooden slats that you slide down in there so that you can control the flow of the water, and it was backing everything up into that pasture land. Mm-hmm. There is an overflow pipe just to the west of that, and it's a little higher than that pipe that goes across the wasteway. So the water had to build up and then eventually flow out that pipe and into the wasteway. And that also was either partially collapsed, it was full of silt, it had some boards in there. So some of the guys from the wastewater treatment plant went out there and used the backhoe, excavated all that area, cleaned it all out. So everything's flowing nice and smooth. We do want to pursue the being able to take that water and dump it directly into the wasteway. And at the present time, we've talked with the city engineer, but I just don't know just exactly where he is on that.
It was a good job last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie.
I do have one,
Oh.
I'm sorry, Carrie.
No, go ahead.
It's been 2 weeks since our last meeting, and I know we were talking a little bit about Tartaric then. It still stinks really bad. I mean, it's like this morning I had to go back in my house because I was just like ready to go. You know, it was just so bad. So they're still apparently dredging out there, I guess. I mean, is there any hope at all?
I received a copy of a letter that Tataric submitted to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. I got my copy today, stating that they've dredged everything from the outside of the pond. They still have about 2 feet remaining in the middle of, I think they said it's about an 80 square foot area or something. I forget exactly what size they said. This letter said that they expect to finish that in about 3 or 4 days next week.
So that's pond number 2?
That's pond number 2.
So we still have, what,
have 3, 4, and 5. We don't know for sure, and they haven't told us for sure. They don't think that those are the cause of the odors, but we're not convinced yet. We think they're.
And then when we go, we're on the agenda at the water board for July 30th?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. I have not been able to confirm yet. Actually, I got my information from Dean that meeting has potentially been changed to July 29th rather than July 30th.
Okay.
Okay. So just I'll try to confirm that and get that to you as soon as I can. I haven't confirmed it yet.
But we'd still be on the agenda, right?
Yes,
We're gonna be on the
yes.
agenda?
They have recommended that their board is recommending that it be on the agenda, so I'm almost for certain it will be. We'll continue to look at that and provide information for any of you or anyone actually who wants to attend that meeting up in Sacramento. So.
And one of the things that I've talked to Cleve about on that is possibly, when we keep the citizens informed on this, possibly arranging some way that we could make accommodations available rather than having, 20, 25 different people driving in their cars up there. Possibly if the city couldn't arrange some type of accommodations to have everybody from the city going up. But we'll let you know further.
Charter a bus or something like that.
Where is the meeting held at again?
It's up in Sacramento,
Okay.
kind of on the east side of Sacramento, out off Highway 50. So
Okay.
is that correct, Ernie? Yeah, we're in that area. Yeah.
Great. Thank
For-
you.
For sensory purposes, is it possible to take a jar of that stuff up there? Pass it around so they can get an idea what we're faced with in this community? I mean,
Probably could.
yeah.
The problem is, when we were out there, we actually picked the stuff up and it doesn't smell it.
Right.
It's strange.
Well, if we were to get a bottle of that stuff that they're scooping out of there right now, I promise you that it would smell.
Oh, yeah.
What could contain it?
Okay. Councilmember, do you have anything else?
I'm finished, thank you.
Councilmember Reed?
Just a short thing. I was a member of the sign committee to look at possibly changing some of the sign ordinances to make them a little more fair to everyone. We had 2 meetings. A couple of businessmen, myself, Charles was there, and Bob Novo, one of the planning commissioners, and Bob Borchard. And basically what we have come up with are some recommendations that will go to the planning commission, basically to make things a little more even for everyone. Some of the things brought up were the monument signs, for instance, the M&M and the Ford dealer, the heights of them and everything, and of course M&M wants to move theirs down to their new location. And this was what is supposedly going to be okayed on an individual basis, but after talking to Bob Borchard today, that's kind of been tabled too. So basically they want to divide, instead of one sign ordinance for the whole city, there will be one for the downtown, one for the what's termed heavy commercial, which is highway area, and across the tracks, and then industrial will have another one, so that it'll just be a little more fair for everyone, and just the whole thing will make a level playing field for everyone. all of these, I gave each one of you one, and basically this will be discussed more at the Planning Commission. We will have another sign meeting if necessary for more suggestions, but basically this is addresses two items, basically M&M Chevrolet and the Newman Feed and Seed, to get this going right away, and then there'll be other things that'll come up later on to try and modernize this sign thing. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you very much. I only have one item tonight, just to give the council an update. At our last meeting, it was brought to us with regards to the half-cent sales tax that SAG was recommending that we approve. We unanimously recommended that we did not approve it, and at the following night at the SAG meeting, I guess they had received word that we had voted no, and also Ceres had also voted against, so they had pulled the agenda item completely off the agenda, so we didn't even discuss it. So if they do bring it back, I will keep the council informed as to what's going on with that half cent. Other than that, I have nothing else, and this time I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.